School District Directors Meeting for April 22nd, and we'll start with the flag salute by Director Wolfer.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any agenda items or additions or deletions for tonight?
We just need to take off under policy review the JEFB. It's not in the packet. We'll come back to it later.
Okay.
And then I guess clarifying questions before I say additions or not. I know we took away public comment, but on these second meetings, we're also taking away board comments. Is that correct?
That's what the plan was.
Okay, that's fine. And then under the financials, I feel there may be a need a little bit more talk about also discussions is about around budget. Is that a time to do that, or should I add a budget specific topic?
I think you can do it. It's a work session, so if there are questions that come up around the financials, the budget,
Oh.
we'll answer what we can.
Okay,
Is it the current budget or the future budget?
it's future-ish budget.
So any discussion about next year's budget needs to be with the budget committee, but I can take questions to bring to the meeting.
Okay, the reason why I question that is because I started talking about it last time, and some folks on this board suggested that this needs to be a board discussion and not a budget discussion.
Oh, I understand what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
I say you ask the question, and then if we need to delay it, we'll say that, but at least you'll have a chance. At least you'll have a chance at that point to ask the question.
Yeah.
Sounds good. That's fine.
Okay. So we would like to welcome the Mountain View and Chehalem Valley Middle School orchestras for here tonight and for their performance. And I'm just going to let you go and welcome and thank you for coming.
We have a prayer for you. It's called Legends of Glory.
Thank you for being here.
I'd like to make one comment. This is amazing. My youngest son was in orchestra from sixth grade. Started as a cello, made it to bass. He he got scholarship. He only got the only scholarship from Newburgh High School that year when he did this. So keep up the good work, strive for excellence, challenge yourself. He's also part of the Portland Youth Philharmonic as well. You guys can do this. You guys all have the desire, I can tell. because you do this after school and you come here on special nights. So congratulations and excellent job. Thank you.
Great job. Great job.
And there's also.
Okay, moving on to the agenda, we'll go to the consent agenda. Well, if anybody at home who didn't hear this would like to go see them perform, you should do that. It was really wonderful. Okay, so here we are on the consent agenda and we have quite a few. We have obviously the personnel recommendations and approval of the board minutes and the second reading of policies CBG, CCB, DDB, DDC, EBCA, and then the big one, which has a lot of letters, GBNAB/JHFE.
And I just wanted to clarify for our board members and for anybody listening at home that this new updating of the policies that we are doing, the ones that Chair Bridges just read are the ones we did the first reading of at our last meeting. If anybody would like to pull any of them out of consent agenda for the second reading, we're happy to do that. And then you will see later on the ones we will do first reading of tonight, those would be in the consent agenda next time, just so we are all on the same page and getting used to this repetition of system that we're working on.
Yeah, it's like JEC, the new one,
Yeah.
is the new
Yeah.
one. Yeah, the upside to having the back and the collated on both sides is we're saving paper. So it gets a little confusing when you're trying to go through them.
Do we want to go back to single-sided?
No.
Okay,
I think we can manage it. It's just
Gotcha.
having to figure out the where one section starts and another ends.
Yep.
Okay.
I do have just, I guess, one discussion. I can't remember. I can't remember if it was the suspected abuse of child reporting
Yep.
requirements. And we had several questions, or I guess I did, about that. And I thought, was it that one or were there other ones that were also thinking about bringing the AR together and just, at least for knowledge sake,
so,
understanding?
so we had talked about that.
Okay.
The issue is that in practice, it's actually, we need to pass the policy and then I take the policy to create the AR.
Right.
So it didn't really fit to do that.
Okay. Okay.
This AR though, I think, and I know there's what we expect of our employees. The policy is definitely related to the law around reporting. We also have expectations as a school district. The AR needs to lay that out specifically, and our current AR does not do that. So that'll be the piece that I'm bringing next time, is to be very clear with like exactly what are the set of steps, administrative rules that you need in our district to report child abuse, so that
Gotcha.
there's no confusion, because there is, our AR does not list all the things that we expect of our employees, and it should. So I'll bring that with that AR.
And
Sounds great. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the role is the board has purview over the policy, but you have purview over the administrative rules.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Wanna
think
make
it's
sure that-
fair to, again, you wouldn't take action, but again, as I said last time, I think it's fair to bring it out and have people look at it and know kind of what how we're enacting the policy, and take questions, or again, like in this case, our AR did not have that piece in it. We need those eyes, those extra eyes on it to say, hey, we should do something different.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I have a couple formatting questions. One is, I think this came up last time, the policies that we reviewed say OSBA model sample policy on the top. Will that be taken off?
Yeah.
As they're published? Okay. And then to what degree, I'm looking down for those who don't have this in front of them, there's a bunch of legal references and citations at the bottom in the footnotes. There's a bunch of Oregon revised statutes and Oregon administrative rules on here. Do we lean on OSBA to stay, like if things are changing in the current legislative session, are they feeding us updates to these?
Correct.
Okay,
We're way behind, but they come out kind of quarterly with updates from new laws and things that are changing. Some of the ones that you'll see in the first readings later are some examples of things that have changed that used to be in their policies and they no longer are. Yep.
thank you.
But we're taking I mean, this is all coming from OSBA and their lawyers.
And we are behind. I don't remember that we did any significant policy update work last year. So, unfortunately, that's why we have a lot to do, a lot of work.
One correction on the board minutes, the consent agenda from last meeting, talked about the donations. I just noticed this Kiwanis Club is misspelled. It should be Kiwanis.
Oh.
Just wanted to call it out since they
Okay.
gave us a donation.
I move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as presented.
I believe it's as amended.
As amended with the,
I
Typo.
move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
any questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to policy review, first reading, Director Allen.
So we have another set of these. We did not meet fully as the committee for these due to some of the things going on. As you can see, there's a lot of these that are just OSBA is recommending to delete. The JEC, the first one is actually about admissions, and that was one that was needed to be updated. And you'll see that there's two versions of this in the packet. The clean version is so I guess there's three. You have our current version. You have the one that has some highlights on there. That's what we're actually going off of. The third that's in there is what OSBA's model policy was. And correct me if I'm wrong. The issue was that didn't actually have certain language that the state needed to be in there since we got it. So we have updated that with the highlighted information.
Any significance on green highlighting versus yellow highlighting?
The green was the district proposed, the yellow was OSBA recommended.
Thank you.
In our federal program review, the audits from ODE recommended to include for foster students more explicitly, and our current policy makes reference to it as students that are experiencing houselessness. So that was just being more explicit in the policy itself, kind of the big changes.
Thank you.
The next is the IC, the school year, school calendar, school day. That's just being recoded to have the ICA at the end. Expanded options program is a duplicate. Recoding that prohibited use of tobacco products. And then on the OSB recommended delete, I believe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that these are policies that OSBA doesn't have policies for. So we could leave them if we wanted to, just they aren't up, I guess, don't have backing from OSBA.
They recommended. I will get that.
Hmm.
They recommended we remove these. They don't have them in their current catalog of policies.
Which policy are we removing?
So the,
Oh, move to delete.
yep.
I do have a question about the IGBHE rescind 2.12.
Yeah.
Is the 2.12 the duplicate?
Yes, and so evidently there's two policies in our actual set, the 2-12 and another one that are both live, I guess. So what the recommendation is, the February on that one, the February 14th, 2012,
Okay.
that we're deleting that policy.
So so then our official readopted was as a 12/11
Well,
or
there's already one that is currently good, so it must be the 11. But I'll ask and get that question before it comes back for the second reading and make sure that we have, but there's two that are currently active, and so they're recommending we
Sure.
get rid of the February one.
On the website, there's one that is updated in October 2022.
Okay.
So when you are searching on our thing, we've got
It's got two newer
Yeah.
dates.
We've got IGBHE and then IGBHE with 2 asterisks next to it.
That's got a
That-
2017 and 2022
Yeah.
dates. Okay. Thank you. Because I was like looking at the bullet points. I don't see a
Yeah.
2.12 in the bullet points. So
Question on KC and KB. I know that's recommended to delete, but they're both about the community and public involvement. Do we have that elsewhere in our policy then that we would want, that the board wants community involvement?
I mean, not having the policy doesn't stop us from requesting community involvement. Obviously, if we want to keep that policy in, by all means, I think it just goes to the point of OSBA doesn't recommend that. But we could have that be a part of our process one way or the other, whether it's full policy or just a part of our board goals, I guess, going forward.
I just would want to, I mean, personally, I just like the idea of having it somewhere that we want the public involved and somewhere, but I mean, if it's not open to suggestions, doesn't have to be in there as a policy, but, or maybe we do have something and it's combined. But I mean, I liked a lot of the stuff that's in these, you know, that we want comments at board meetings and we encourage that, because we are representatives of the community. So that's just my feedback on that, but maybe we combine the two into something or simplify it. Just that it is a board prerogative to invite the public's involvement. So it may not have to be as cumbersome as these two, but
Yeah, I think the discussion is on whether we have it as a listed policy or if we are able to emphasize it on our school district priorities. Our second priority is to build strong relationships with families, community, to promote trust, support, and collective responsibility. So I think perhaps in the future, we have the ability to make those priorities more explicit or more indicative of this kind of information.
I know that one of the ways we do that is through setting policy. So that's just to be my just something to think on before our next reading is maybe is that just because I know that we actually as a board have very few things that we actually do. And one of those things is setting policy. And I think setting policy that reflects those goals can be a way to show that transparency to the community.
I can call OSBA and get more of a explanation around that of why they chose to remove, because again, every district, those goals every district's want.
Mhm.
So what's their reasoning behind not having those policies? So I'll get more of a reason.
Okay,
So I'll
thank you.
pull that.
And I would say even beyond that, like this was adopted in 2007. If we want to keep it in, it would probably be a good idea to try to push that back to see if these legal references are still up to date and if we still think that those 5 are what we want in there, but
And maybe
Yeah.
OSBA is coming out with something to replace it or something else. So who knows? That's good information. So, thank you.
was going to add, I'll add my name to that same request to better understand the rationale behind why these are deleted. I'm going to say the same thing I think you're saying, Director Wolfer, and policies carry a signaling power that I think is really important. And if, it's one thing to name that that's one of our priorities, it's another thing to know that it's actually policy. And so just want to make sure that we all kind of have that same foundation.
Any other questions at this point on the policies?
Question about JHDA. So this one is also recommended for deletion on psychological testing of students. My assumption is that this one is sort of usurped by other laws that require testing. Is that?
I will find out.
Okay.
There's some of these that they listed notes on why they're doing that, but there's others that they are not. So I will have to go find out.
I would also ask to have JFAA added to the list of why they're recommending to delete. Ironically enough, I think there was an email string that kind of talks, to this policy about student eligibility for activities and or athletics.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and just to understand why is this being removed, et cetera. So.
I have that answer.
Okay, well, that's fine. Great.
This should be in the rights and responsibilities. The student handbook is where this belongs, which is why they're recommending we delete it from the this policy, and then it goes into the rights and responsibilities.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I have a committee of folks who are reworking the rights and responsibilities to update it so that it's ready for the beginning of next year.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments about the policy review and first reading? If not, Dave, we can move into long-range facilities plan.
Oh, hang on. Did you get the slideshow? Let me do that right now. I went to boardroom. So a couple of months ago, when we started talking about the long-range facility plan, there was kind of some comments about, hey, we don't really know that much about it. So what I did is kind of go through and take a look at kind of what is the long-range facility plan? What are the components of it? And then kind of what does it lead us to? We've had some conversations about what are some of the next steps that we need to take. So I want to talk a little bit about that. You got a clicker, or do you want me just to point? Gotcha. The basic long-range facility plan takes into account three basic things. Our educational program, and it's trying to make a forecast of what we're going to do for 100 years. And so it's looking very long range. Do we have the facilities? Do we have the capability to carry out our mission and vision? So it takes into account educational programs. It looks at facility conditions over time and when it starts to put some age of life on different buildings. So we know we want to be able to replace buildings over time without getting into one 10-year decade where there's 3 buildings that need to be replaced. And so we want to be thinking about things in a very long-term sense. And the last is to keep in track of enrollment and capacity. So to know where kids are, where they're going, and the rest. Our last long-range facility plan was completed. It started actually when I was still here in the spring of 2018, and it completed January 2019. It's been 6 years since we had that plan. And as I started to look into it to figure out what I was going to present, what I realized is it is completely outdated. There's a couple of things. The components are, the first component is to look at the vision and the educational program. So it looks at the district and begins to say, what's your strategic plan? What's your mission, your vision? The last time we did mission and vision was like 2015. At least the ones that I saw, I was part of the group that created them. So we need some updating to do on vision, values, the teaching and learning vision, goals. All of those pieces need to kind of get updated. It goes through and it looks at existing conditions. So it'll go through all of the different facilities that we own. It'll look at how old it is. They'll do a state assessment to look at the various condition that those facilities are. And then it'll look at age and has a very interesting chart that begins to kind of figure out, assuming that a building will last somewhere around 75 to 100 years, you know, where do we need to start replacing buildings over a 100-year span? From ours, these were in the original plan. This is the district vision. Students will graduate with the knowledge and skills needed to be successful contributing citizens. All of this is work that we did back in 2015. Mission, district strategic plan, the core values, committee planning goals. So as we start looking at this is all work that we actually have to undertake again and refresh. As I look at it, I don't disagree with a lot of this work, but it is work that we need to look at again. It goes through and it mapped out the as-is replacement value of each of the different district facilities. Now, again, we're coming to the end of a bond, so many of these things, like the NHS greenhouse, is no more. We have a new building that replaces it. So again, this long-range facility plan has a lot of, it's not terribly accurate. This maps out kind of what it would cost to build a building new versus what it would cost to renovate it. And what you're looking for on this chart is they kind of look for those two lines to start to get close together, because then it makes more sense to replace a building rather than renovate it. So they'll go through and they'll run this plan. Again, this has now changed because we've renovated Edwards, we've built a new Dundee, we've added to the high school. So all of these are now changing. Oh, thanks.
Is that from, I know this completed in 2019, I guess 2018 really, is that when this chart was from, or was that from earlier, before this all got put together?
In 2018, I saw this chart. So
Okay.
this was already created. I know that there was, as there was new leadership and stuff, it took them a little while to kind of finish off that
Yeah.
long-range facility plan. But yeah, this work was done a little bit earlier.
Okay, thank you.
The other components is we go through and we look at capacity and enrollment, district capacity, enrollment forecasting, school utilization, growth beyond, in this case, 25, 26 was the 10-year lookout or 7-year lookout at that time. Site opportunities to look at kind of where are our sites, where do we need them, where is the enrollment at, and the rest. Now this again is, this was the enrollment capacity forecast as of 2018-19. And again, I just thought it was interesting. It was a 200 student increase, but we're actually 1,000 students down from this place. Again, just kind of pointed at the fact that, ooh, this is not, it did not go the way they were forecasting. And then they give us kind of a graph that measures out the current enrollment, the projected enrollment, and then the gray is the capacity of the building. And again, these have all changed for us. And so we have all new sorts of work that needs to happen. The middle schools, I mean, our capacities actually are the gray bars are the things that are staying the same here, but the other pieces are the ones that need some work. And our high school. Yep, I'll go back.
I'm sorry, can you go back to the middle school?
Yep.
Do you recall why Chehalis Valley's existing building, there's like a gray bar behind it, like faded? Do you know what that?
Yeah, it was the portables.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't mean to go fast. It's just that it was outdated. I just wanted to kind of illustrate the fact that our plan, we're going to have to do some work. Give me a click there. And then the end of this long range facility plan is basically there's a bunch of regulatory information that goes into this plan around laws and then there's basically they'll lay out a long range facility plan. Usually this is the precursor to bond, sitting down with a bond committee to lay out what the next bond may look like. And so that's kind of the components of this long range plan. It would give us this kind of data where it talks about the permanent capacity. It looks at the historic enrollment, projected enrollment. They look at differences and we begin to figure out where we have needs. And then last would be some kind of layout or some kind of plan for what we need to do in the next decade or so. So I brought this up because I think it really, some of the conversations that we've been having around what needs to happen next is I'm going to propose what we need to do next. And then I'm looking for you to kind of say, yes, go make it so. I don't think we need to take action on this piece, but I do need some direction on kind of where to head. For us to get the long range facility plan, we really need to have an understanding of our capacity and enrollments. And to understand our capacity and enrollments, we actually need to go talk about boundaries. And so I think after looking at this and beginning to kind of map it out, I think what should happen here is next fall, I should run a boundary committee and set up these are usually very large committees of folks from across the district, both staff and parents, and begin to look at where our boundaries are and how do we begin to, where do we set those boundaries to improve kind of currently we've got 2 buildings that are full and other buildings that are not. So we need to kind of balance that enrollment. Before we can do a long range facility plan, we need to balance that enrollment and so we know where the capacities are. The second thing I think we need to do is strategic planning. So my next suggestion would be, I think we need to move to start the strategic plan sometime in the spring of next year, is to bring together parents, administrators, staff, to sit down and talk about what's our district mission and vision. We have old ones, but they haven't been used as a communication tool in a long time. So we need to bring people together to talk about that. Once we have kind of the boundary committee done and the strategic planning, at some point, probably the next school year would be 26, 27, maybe 27, 28, we should sit down and run a long range facility plan. But it's going to take us a while to kind of put all of these pieces into place so that we can make good decisions about long range facility planning. So that's kind of my suggestion. I think I had a slide here that said, kind of talk amongst yourself and then tell me if that sounds like the plan or where you guys are at on this. But it just felt like these are very large projects with lots of engagement. And so I just trying to figure out where they fit. So I'm looking for feedback or your thoughts about this.
Is this a budgeting aspect? Is that the enrollment balancing process? Is that going to be something we need to?
It doesn't really have as much of a budget implication per se because of the kids. We're going to teach the kids whether they're in their current school or in a new school. There is some savings that could come from this just in how we're allocating staff or whatever, but really the decisions will kind of, I think, come down to how do we make our organization more efficient and deal with capacity and look at enrollments over time. Another thing that will happen in this process was we'll have to do an enrollment study. And usually it's been a person out of PSU who does most of the enrollment studies for the state. He's now, I think, working in a private company, but there are some folks who can begin to do that work for us.
I'll say I like this idea. I think my votes on that is to go forth. I think we've been talking about a strategic plan and the need for that, but we had a lot of fires to put out for 2 years. And I think, you know, I like how you said that next spring and really before that, the boundary committee and some of that, because some of that's going to tie into that strategic plan and figuring out, because yeah, we do have some buildings that are half full and some that are very full. And yeah, so that'd be my take on it.
I agree. In personal discussions with other board members or with you, Dave, or the prior two superintendents, I have brought up boundary and balancing. So that is a personal goal of mine for sure. And I agree with the longer terms approach because I understand it is going to be quite an endeavor and it's going to take a lot of community involvement. I also think about the enrollment study. It might be a good idea after that whole new development across JA gets in there and see maybe that might change things. So, you know, couldn't do stuff right now. We see the impact of what's over there next across the hospital, but we're not going to know the impact of what's across from JA until we actually have a neighborhood in there. So, yeah, good. I say I'm with Director Wolfer. Let's go forth on this. So,
Yeah, I'm on board and excited. I think that there's been a lot of ask from us as a board and then also from community members for this type of information. So I think the more data, the better. And then I look forward to that strategic planning because I love the mission and vision.
I agree, particularly with the strategic planning. I think that's a process that I'm excited for. I want to understand. So Director Hayden made me think about the boundary committee. How does that work before the new developments are in?
I think so. When we actually go out and do the enrollment studies, they'll actually work with the cities around the permitting and what's permitted, what's going to be coming on board. And then they'll make estimates at how many kids per house. There's a ratio that we begin to apply to those permits to figure out, to try and estimate what those enrollments are. I will say those ratios have been changing a lot over the last 6 years. And so I don't really have a good feeling yet of what is the right number to apply to those new areas. But that's what the experts in population study will do for us.
So they'll take it into consideration in accounting that study. Okay. That's good.
So the other question I have about this is I just hoping you can articulate again why the capacity and enrollment needs the boundary committee's input in order for us to do the long range facilities plan. And the reason I'm asking is because our enrollment has declined to the point where I could see if we were bursting at the seams in some schools, like we got a plan for how to expand. We're not there. So why do we need to wait for that information?
To do what?
What I thought I heard you say was we need to do a boundary committee and some strategic planning before we can do a long range facilities plan.
The long range facility plan will really be around the bond. And we're still, I think our last one passed in 2021. I've got to take a look at specifically when it comes off of the rolls, because we wouldn't move for another bond before it rolls off of rolls. So we actually still have time to do the long range facility plan. I think one of the reasons why you want to do that is we do have capacity at all schools. I don't think we're going to push our capacity, but we do need to kind of know how many kids we're putting in each school and what's the logic between the neighborhoods. It was funny, we were discussing this today, but Don Staples ran the last boundary committee long ago, and the decisions that were made about which neighborhoods went to which school, those are very important conversations for us to have again about how do we manage those. And there will be different numbers of kids. And we will want to know what that looks like before we start calculating capacities. Even though we're not going to hit, we have a ways to go before we're going to have to worry about like overfilling the school. That's why I'm suggesting we do that work first.
Okay. Thank you.
To bounce off Director Byerly's question there, is part of the goal is maybe to also balance the school. So like we're not like 95% on a couple and 60% on a couple, that we're like 75% across all elementary schools. Is that a goal of the boundary committee?
Yes.
Or, I mean,
I think the other issue that we're coming up against is that as we're moving in, we're looking at staffing. We now have 3 small schools, and staffing them becomes much harder when we have like 6 sections in one school. To get to 2 sections, you have to double the number of students in any grade. And so the more small schools we have, the harder it is for us to staff. And that's something that I think we, again, have to at least look at and make decisions about with everything out in front of us. That's one of my worries right now, is having 3 small schools is creating a situation where we're having to use a lot of staff. And there may be more efficient ways to do that.
agree with that. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what a boundary committee would look like? Is
Yeah.
it sounds like, I know it's been danced around at some of the other meetings about twice now in the last few years about potentially of closing schools, moving things, any of those things. I would anticipate wanting there's going to be a lot of public input on that. And I would hope if you could speak more to what that would look like, because I
Yeah.
think that those are decisions that are going to need a lot of public input.
Yeah, and we can sit down and talk more about exactly how we want to do this, but here's my experience, which is I've sat through a couple of them, and usually we bring in administrators, staff, parents from all of the various schools to sit down and begin to talk about what the problems are, what the data says, and then they'll go through and actually begin to do some models of like, what are some options and how do we maintain some diversity in the schools, and by moving, and they've kind of laid out some different models and people give feedback until we kind of get to a place where we make a decision about how to move forward. But it's a long process. And there's a lot of engagement because there's a lot of feelings about your home schools. And so it just needs space and time. Many folks, when I say I want to start the strategic planning in the spring, I think Portland Public's last boundary committee went multiple years trying to make a decision. So I'm not even sure. I'd love to be able to get out and kind of make sense of this and then make a decision, but the process will actually determine that.
From the board perspective, is there like a committee here that helps run that, or is it strictly on you and your administration to run these and manage this?
Typically, we had some board members involved,
Yeah.
and then they would bring the recommendation to the board.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, thanks. I think that's again, I really like this idea. I really like moving slow on any conversations about moving slow and having public input and really making sure we do it right, because any talk about moving kids, whether that's closing or reallocating, any of those things have a huge impact on the community. Like you said, it's not just feelings, it's also I think Director Allen brought it up at one of the last times this was brought up. It's a huge impact on students to change schools and teachers and and staff and everything. So I think slow is better. So we do it right and make sure we minimize any negative impact and maximize any positive as we really focus on being student focused. So thank you.
I agree with everybody. I had a question about the previous 10 years. I saw that there was the section 1 goals. Section 1's not right. That one. Phase 1. A little small. I'm just curious, do you know how much of that we were able to accomplish over the past 10 years?
So there's actually, this goes to a ballot title. And in the ballot title, it kind of lists out with So from the long range facility plan, my experience is it went to a boundary committee. And the boundary committee kind of created a ballot title and the piece under that. That's probably a more accurate place for us to go to look and see what specifically was in this bond and what got achieved. And we can take a look at that. I can bring it back to you.
Yeah, not a huge thing. I'm just curious at how, I assume that that's part of this process is you set goals that are ideally lofty and
Yeah.
good and figuring out, what percentage of that goes through. Just curious. Thank you.
Well, I think just being on the facilities committee and following that very closely, I think everything that has the top 4 items, we're all done with this.
Mhm.
And the full modernization. I mean, that comes with the CTE building. So I think some of the program improvements that might need to be understood better, but anything that comes with a physical facility, I think most of that's been addressed at some point.
Will this be online in the board packet?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
My eyes are terrible. I can't.
That's,
see it.
And I felt bad again, because as I got into this, I just realized this is really outdated. And that's why bringing it back, it's more about how are we going to move forward than understanding what was in this plan, because it's really, things have changed. The world moved on.
So if this had been done in an ideal world, this would have been redone around 2020.
Typically I would say every 5 years is kind of, but it's another pretty big process.
Yeah.
So I think most districts are kind of 2 or 3 years before the next bond cycle would be the time that they would really be looking hard at the long range facility plan. That would be my take on, because this is the precursor to a bond committee and then off to the bond.
Right.
Do you know how used this was for our 2021 bond?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the items here are pretty much, they took this. And again, I know it was Malum who was doing a lot of this work, and that's exactly, that's how they do it, is it goes basically from here right to the ballot title.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would expect to see some agreement between this long range facility plan and what we did in the bond in 21.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a consideration with the board, I think we should be looking to probably in June is talking to our interim superintendent about the potential of extending a contract. Because what I would fear is that we put a lot of investment and utilize Dave's expertise here. His current contract goes to June 30 of 2026, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a timeline that is a little challenging for us. And I think now I don't know how to make that magic happen or whether or not the board as a whole wants to do that. But I think that is a conversation that we will have to have about continuity of leadership in our school district for a little while longer. Because our initial plan was we would start the recruitment process this fall for a new superintendent in the spring, and then a transition with Dave and that person. And then Dave goes off into happy retirement. But I am, that's, I think, going to have to be a conversation as to whether this board, and if Dave wants to extend, how would we make that happen? And that's obviously a conversation with Dave. It's a conversation the board needs to have. It's a conversation with legal about how to make that magic happen. So
I'm grateful that you brought that up, because that is something that has been on my mind and also something I've heard from community members. And I think, I've spoken before that I really feel that continuity is a huge strength and something. We have the opportunity for that asset. I would be in support of that. I think that also as we think about these long range plans, as we're going to do this one, part of that plan needs to be, when does the next one occur? And we have done so much work that has just been reactive in the last year, and before that, the work that you all put in. And I think that I am excited to hear about the potential for conversations that we could have about just really some longer term continuity and support for our district.
So I'm grateful that you brought that up. So I think that that will require some conversation at the leadership level, and then with the full board. But I think we should probably move on that, you know, relatively quickly. And maybe make that a goal for a June, is to have some conversation about what would that look like. I do feel that this last year has been really stabilizing for the district, for the community. I mean, look at who's here. Round of applause for the administrators in the room. You know, I think the community is feeling much more confident about what's happening in the schools, and this planning is very exciting, and talked with Dave a little bit about that. And what I do worry about is that we wouldn't have an extension and then we're out suddenly looking for somebody, and, you know, that may or may not have that strength and skill and understanding of this district and relationships that would move the long range facility planning. So I think that that should be, I'm suggesting, I don't guess we really have to vote on it, but that as leadership, that we work towards a conversation about that and make it happen, make a decision by June, so that we at least have some expectations of what the fall would look like. It's either looking like we're recruiting for somebody to do all this work, or we're, you know, leaning on Dave to do all this work and make it happen.
Sounds like you got some thinking to do too there.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this, and I'm ready to serve longer. This has been rejuvenating for me, and working with the staff and colleagues and trying to kind of get things reorganized and doing good work for kids. So yes, I'm very open to this conversation. I'm excited about the work that I just talked about. I'm excited about doing that work, and realize that, again, another change right now means that you're going to have to stop everything and then wait for someone else to pick it up. And there are good people out there. I'm not saying that. It's going to be another stall. And that's my worry right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's really good to hear. And so I echo, I still long-term stability is great, and you've been awesome. So,
And I may or may not have already had a conversation along that line with both Dave and legal counsel, just to sort of say what would that even look like. So, but I think that that's a deeper dive with the board, because obviously we want everybody to be in agreement with that and feeling good about moving forward. So,
well, I just like that, just to throw in there that it's, I took some notes down of just, sounds like conversation. It's nice to see some longer term things in these future board meetings. It's like, okay, I wrote down, you know, superintendent talks over the summer, boundary committee in the fall, strategic plan in the spring. Like, I really like seeing that, and really just knowing what that means for this district, and where we've been and where we're going. So it's really heartening to me to see that. So thank you, everyone.
okay. Any further questions about this topic? I think it was a good conversation. Director Hayden, do you feel like that sort of wraps in your questions and concerns around what you brought up at the budget committee?
I don't know if you want to start, if you want to open that can of worms, we can. I wasn't, I still think it's about the finance part of the budget, not necessarily the long-term plan part of the budget, but
Yeah,
I know, because I know what it came out. So, I mean, I guess we're gonna open it up right here. So,
we're opening
so
up that
yeah,
can.
so there we go. So first of all, I just want to apologize to you, everybody, and the budget committee members that aren't here, but hopefully you're listening or watching this. I did come across a little crass. I am still so pissed off at our prior administration, at where we're at. Teachers are still being impacted. Hell, our household is still impacted because of the actions that happened last year. And so I guess what I'm at is, I'm angry, but I'm also frustrated, because we did hire you, Dave, originally. It's supposed to be kind of a 2-year-ish contract to get us back to status quo. what you and Nate presented, with no fault of your own, is you presented something that looked to, from my lens, it's going to take 4 years to come up with the new status quo. So I am also a person that never adds a negative without coming up with at least throwing some type of solution out there on whatever you want to call it. So my kind of short-term thinking was, okay, well, what if we, like what Dave said earlier, like sometimes moving boundaries around and putting allocation of resources into more one building and then having 3 small buildings can save money. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe we can do that in the short term. So that was where my rationale was coming around from that. I do still love to hear that you, Dave, you are thinking about maybe longer term, but it still comes to the point of, I think I think we need to define and get to our new status quo quicker than 4 years. And I guess I am wanting this board to discuss, and if it needs to be a budget committee discussion, that's fine. Half the problem is last year was not a standard budget committee year. We got thrown into the biggest fire ever. So we don't know what a normal budget committee looks like, right? I mean, we were all, juggling with fire and whatever. And so I'm trying to get us to a new status quo. It might be another difficult impact this year coming up, but then the years after that, we can start building back up instead of the next 4 years. Again, my vision of what I heard, it's going to take about 4 years. And like, well, we're not sure if we have to lay off more teachers, add 2 more furlough days back in. And it's like, I'm not going to be able to take that emotional impact of that for 4 years. Now I can maybe do it for another year or 2, but 4 years? Heck no. And like, I think we're going to lose trust from our community and from our teachers and our staff of like, we don't know what the future is for Newburgh. And so I guess my hope is that we have a discussion, and again, that this may be more the strategy side of the budget versus just the approval and questions and all this other stuff we do from the committee side, of like, how do we get to that new status quo quicker? Because I think that's what we need to do. Because I don't think 4 years is the good version in my mind. So
I have a couple thoughts on that, if that's it.
perfect. I love to hear
So
the people's
I've been
thoughts.
thinking a lot about that too, and I think, yeah, and with your explanation tonight, I think, yeah, I think the talk about closing a school, that's a nuclear option, right? That's why I like the idea of the boundary committee and really bringing that. I do think you have a fair point on some of these things, and I know we floated around this option. We started talking about it last year, and I think a better option to consider is the public option levy at some point could get us back there. I think we've been showing some work in rebuilding our budget and rebuilding that trust with the community. We didn't want to ask when we're in the midst of a fire. I think we still have some work to do before we go, but I think that, yeah, presenting some of those things to the community at some point of that could be on the table down the way, or more furlough days, because that impacts parents. They have to do care and things like that. We've gotten feedback from community about class sizes. There are ways, there's people in this community that want more SROs, things like that, right? And there are ways to get that and get to that new status quo, a better status quo at some point. I think bringing it back to the community with a public option levy would be far better than us as a board taking a unilateral move to shut down a school. I think the problem is still there, but I think that would be a far better solution in my mind at some point, because that's community involvement, right? They have to vote for it. They have to show their priorities. Is that with the school and what we want, and that we're listening to what they want, and that's how we get there. So that's just my thought on that, because I agree. Yeah, I want to get to the point where we have no furlough days, and that might be a way to get there. So.
And I appreciate that, and I would consider that too. And again, I think the output of what I said and suggesting a school be shut down temporarily was just more of top of mind, kind of instant thought. The only thing I see about the bond part of that is, and again, I know that we're way early in this discussion, but that still is the hope, that there still is no guarantee. What our guarantee is we have a budget of X, and we need to get back to status quo with that budget. We can't rely on what's going to happen with, what next year may happen. I mean, gosh, we're already looking at possibly having super huge impacts because of everything else happening at the federal level, right? But bottom line is what we know and what we are, not 100% confident maybe, because I don't know what's happening in the state level of how that's been more acknowledged on what the final amount's going to be or whatever. But like, we know this is going to happen this next year. And I would like to understand what that truly would mean if we went full, let's go status quo next year. Or what is the 2-year plan? Maybe we do 4 furlough days this year plus whatever the impact is, and then 4 furlough days, we get those back, and now we're, two school years from now, we are more back at that new status quo. Again, to me, it sounded like 4 years. So, and I've already expressed that multiple times. So, but thank you for your input, James.
So can I say just, I wrote that down. So let me see if we can, Nate and I can kind of put some meat behind what that looks like. Again, I'd feel better if we had the whole budget committee here, but I think, let me see if we can I have some thoughts about it. But I wrote it down. We've got your questions that came up last time. We're going through and answering those right now. So we'll prep this and see if we can illustrate kind of what we think. It is a little hard right now to estimate what's going to happen even a month from now with the way things are going at the federal level. But we can give you some thoughts around this. I don't think everything is 4 years, but I do think there are some things that are going to build back slower. So but I added it to our set of questions and we'll bring that together. Sorry, Saul, I interrupted you.
I mean, I can't not think of the idea of if this was just a product that we're moving from one warehouse to another to not pay for said warehouse and workers. That'd be one thing, but like I can't not think these are children that, all right, we don't like a 4-year plan. So instead we're going to ruin 2 years of you trying to figure out how to be an elementary school student by picking you up and moving you. And then hopefully next year you'll go back to your old building, and the effect that has on families and parents picking up, like, it's just, I'm not saying don't have a conversation. Like, I'm okay with finding out what the financial impact actually would be with that. That's great. Like, information, data all day, give it to me. But the idea of somehow being able to get that data, make a choice for next school year in September with figuring out everything that the budget is figuring out with FTE and it just, that sounds like trying to inflame the community into fear that, like, again, if we're saying we're just getting information to see so everyone could know what this cost savings would be, that's great. It's when it becomes a conversation that immediately is bigger than that without any information that scares me, because we had this once, and the amount of fear that young parents and trying to have that conversation with students or teachers, it's a lot. And yeah, so that's just where I'm at.
With that, Dave, can you also throw in with some of those what it could look like if we went for a public option levy at some point? I mean, obviously that would be a lot of community input, but having been through a district that had some similar issues, they were able to do a pretty quick turnaround. The problem was presented in like September, October, and it was passed in May. So I think that was, and part of sitting through those was they did present kind of like what Director Hayden's talking about. Hey, if we don't get this, these are what is going to happen, and showing those things to the, here's if we do pass it, here's if we don't. And the community ultimately said, yeah, this is going to be hard for our wallets, but we want more teachers. We want smaller classroom sizes. So I think that could be, it can be done in a quicker way, if that's really something that the community wants. And ultimately, I mean, that's the ultimate way of community involvement, right? They vote on it. They decide if they're going to do that and if that's their priority. So I would just like to see that maybe thrown in there.
By thrown in there, you mean the boundary committee, that set of processes that we want to go through.
Or just as you're going through some of these questions that like Director Hayden was talking about, maybe as another alternative, if like as we're looking at the budget and talking about as a board and also with the budget committee, if we're looking at a certain amount of furlough days next year, and the following year and things like that, could that be interrupted and dramatically brought down with a levy? You know, I know that that's a long process, but maybe that's just something thrown into the algorithm here as we're looking at things.
Saul, are you going to say something?
I would just think that like just knowing that we can't get the levy passed before
Right.
the next fiscal year, it seems like a large task to put on in the middle of, but outside of that, I would love to have that information as well, maybe.
We have some information we got from David Williams when he came in to speak to us. So I have some numbers that we could kind of give you an overview of what that might look like with our current needs, that kind of thing. The others might take me longer to do, but we do have some numbers.
Yeah, I don't mean super drilled down, because I
Okay.
just think that obviously these are some issues that are out there, and I could start prepping the community about that. That discussion may come, because we're hearing, I mean, I'm hearing it from people too about classroom sizes. So,
Mhm.
and as we're discussing those things, those are going to come up in the budget, and obviously we're going to have to pass a budget with those things in mind, but that could be something to talk about.
So I would like to just clarify for our viewing audience. We are not talking about closing any schools for the 25-26 school year at all. Just want to make sure that we're all like paying attention. Director Byerly, that we're not talking about closing schools, okay? Because I don't want a panic out there.
Yes.
Yes, and I apologize to the public that I brought that up as my go-to thought and throwing that out there. My apologies.
Because I was going to make a joke about having some PTSD around that comment, but I just didn't want to make any be flippant about PTSD. But that really swung me back into that awful meeting that we had. Yeah. And in fairness, that was done in a different way and not of all of our knowing, and some things that were going on. So, okay, it sounds like we have some really exciting work ahead of us.
Yeah.
And that was a really great discussion.
Thank you.
Nate, would you like to talk to us about financials?
Well, yes, I would. Okay, so in the board packet is the financials as of the date, the month ending March 31st. And just a reminder, we set it in periods so that we can talk about the changes month to month versus just having it be just random updates. So we're just doing it in print, and then that helps me to keep it all together. So in general, the general fund is on track for a positive ending fund balance as before. There has, in this period, we did have some changes to anticipated revenues. Number one, I think Dave talked about this last board meeting, our high cost disability for last year that we anticipate getting the second payment of went from a 56% reimbursement down to a 28 point or 29% reimbursement. So that did affect this. And so I was hoping to show the ending fund balance go up a little bit more, but it's still right around 665,000 at the end of March. I do believe it will continue to creep up a little bit. And so that I don't see any reason for it to come down. However, not knowing what I don't know, just like the high cost disability thing, when we come next month, I'll tell you what's happened between March 31st and April 30th. So special revenue and debt service funds are performing as projected. Our capital projects activities are have slowed down drastically. We'll have another pickup of activity in the summer as we finish up projects that we want kids not to be in the vicinity as we're doing. The other thing to look forward to is we have prepared the appropriations transfer for the next board meeting. So we'll be revising the budget, the current year budget, based on our needs. And I want to point out on page 40, so the one that says appropriations. So you've seen these negatives on the 1000s and 2000s for the last few months. And so what we're going to do next month is appropriation transfer is going to revise the budget so that we're within appropriation on those areas. So that contingency is going to go away. And then there's going to be a 2%. I'm just giving you some foreshadowing here. There's going to be an increase in the overall budget, but I just want to see that it's not a change in where we're projecting here. It's just changing the budget number so that we're authorized to make our expenses within appropriation levels. So that's there.
Can we just slow down? Because I already have
Yeah.
some questions. So,
Oh, please, yeah.
so very first page 39, current year property taxes, we're still, what, 3 months left and we're at 800,000 left to come in, it looks like.
Yep.
Is that standard or I thought from my understanding in the past from other CFOs or financial officers or whatever, that we should had most of it. I mean, we did have most of it come in by now, but still almost 1 million left out there. It seems a little.
So we get property taxes from 4 different areas. We have our current year, prior year, interest on past due taxes, and then taxes in lieu. And so, and actually, one of the things that's helping us is this April's property taxes came in higher than we anticipated as well. And so this is, we get the information from the county that shows what's coming in, and we make projections based on that. But as far as when people choose to pay for prior year taxes or how much that is, we don't have it's based on the information we have. So, yeah.
Okay, so is that, do you feel that's a concern at this point? We still have
It
800,000
will
left?
affect, I think the way they're coming in right now, it will affect our adjustment next year
Yeah.
negatively because it's coming in stronger than we anticipated. Not drastically, but
But for this year,
for this
we should
year-
be fine.
for this year, it's pushing up. It's a
Okay.
push up for this fiscal year. Yeah.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Somebody else have a question about first page? If not, I got a question on the second page. So the appropriations, I totally understand what you're saying there. Is that also going to change 4,000 though?
On capital projects?
Yeah, well, yeah, because we're still showing a negative swing on that. So
On next month's report, what you'll see is we finished going through all the encumbrances for that. And after we've closed out POs that should have been closed prior, we're actually gonna have budget capacity again back in this level. So we won't have an appropriation transfer there.
okay,
The encumbrances are gonna shrink down to where we're within budget.
thank you.
Good question. Yeah, I guess, I think there was anything else I was gonna share, but I think that was it.
I'm sorry, I was trying to look at last month's and this month's side by side. I guess, and I'm sorry if I just missed this by when I finally found it. At what point are we doing the appropriations change?
We're gonna do that at the May 6th.
Okay, and is there a number though? Like, I know we're over 800. Was there a
There will
specific-
be a number, yes, but I
Okay.
didn't bring it today.
Okay.
I was just foreshadowing that coming.
And then just to clarify again, sorry, I just got this up. There was no revenue since February.
So what happens is you should see on there that the actual changed and the
Page
projected
number.
changed, but the end goal, the end product should be
Which one?
nearly the same.
I don't see any change on the actuals of the revenue
But that's what.
For-
from February 28 to this.
So
March
the one you're looking at, it
No, I
says
get that.
2375, 591.
Was,
Uh,
yes, I
The
applied.
one from our last meeting where we got this, it says 49,158,945 on the total SSF funding. Bottom shows
Carry over.
68,94530.
I think you're fine.
So there is a change, yeah.
Yeah.
So our state school fund went down. Where are you,
I'm looking at from our last
Then
board
Why
packet,
did you?
Mhm.
the February 28th one, at least online, has the same numbers as the one in front of me right now on the actuals.
in the white part?
Oh, no, sorry, I'm looking at okay, my apologies.
Yeah.
I see now where I messed that up. Thank you.
Yeah, the last column is last year.
Got it.
So that one shouldn't change.
My apologies.
No, that's good. We were just looking at 2 different spots. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, I do. I have both here physically, and I see
Yeah.
a good difference.
That's fully on me.
Oh,
Good job.
You asked for somebody else. Good job.
Okay, any further questions for Nate? About the budget?
So that was your
Financials?
updates in general?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have more questions?
Not that I think of, I just didn't know. I thought there was. You said you wanted to point out what you pointed out, and that's great. So that's all.
Okay, then we're going to move on to the integrated programs. Jillian?
Thank you. Tonight, I will be reviewing our application for the integrated grants for the next biennium. All of the information can be found on our district website under the district tab. The information that you have in your packets is a review of prior year's plans and what we've done. And you'll notate that again, the information I'm showing you tonight is a carry forward of those plans. Right, Christia, could you put my slides up, please? And to review what we talked about last month, or the last board meeting, sorry, was to share kind of the prioritized proposals of the plan, give the opportunity for input, explain how our plan was developed. So we talked a little bit about the community involvement that we had in our plan, to get any additional feedback, and then to introduce the plan for your approval tonight. So that's kind of a recap of what we completed last month.
I'm sorry, Jillian, one quick question. What we have is just last year's integration plan. And so what's on the screen is going to be, so we can compare the two.
Yep.
Correct.
Great,
And
thank you.
I had emailed everyone the slides after the last board meeting
Yes.
that reflects
thank you.
this as well. It's not working. Keep it in the slide. Okay, there we go. So as a reminder, the integrated plan includes multiple initiatives that ODE has braided together or drawn together for one process. So working on high school success, our student investment account, our continuous improvement plan as a district is in part of this process. Career and technical education, our CTE programming, attendance supports and everyday matters, and then early indicator and intervention systems. And this year, as part of the application process, ODE also included the early literacy grants as well, which is not listed on this slide. So they braided all of these together because they're all working for the same goals, right? To support well-rounded education, supporting opportunities for all students, engaging our community, and strengthening systems and capacity. So all of these initiatives or grants or programs from ODE are working together to accomplish the goals that you'll see here. One of the things that I bragged on last time was how great we were doing on our longitudinal performance goals. And so as a reminder, our initial goals here are to increase student attendance above 95%, increase our overall graduation rate to 95% for all demographic groups in our community, ensure access to our CTE pathways for all students, and then as measured, by the student participation in those pathways, as well as students increasing their graduation numbers, improve student performance and access in math and language arts as measured by the SBAC. And I'm not going to read all of these, but just give you the overall picture of where we're going here. Reducing our student to staff ratio, so class sizes, and then creating a robust and sustainable teaching and learning environment for all students and staff members. So these are our overall outcomes that we will be reporting on as we continue into the next biennium. So none of our goals have changed next year. So as we move into the 25-26 school year, our allocation for student investment accounts is primarily our staffing. These staff support the students' health and safety. So we've got our school-based health center in there. We've got school counselors. We've got licensed therapists. We have our SRO contracts in there. And then also supporting well-rounded education. So focusing on math, literacy, and language acquisition supports, special education. And then as we move into high school success, focusing on dropout prevention, post-secondary success, career and technical education staff, the curriculum supporting these, and the professional development and training is the bulk of the high school success grant. So here again, this grant is mostly our staff in the organization. And then our early literacy grant is also at the staff in our organization, and these folks are providing high dosage tutoring. So this is like reading intervention that's happening in our elementary and middle schools, professional development and coaching for reading specialists, and our general education teachers, and extended learning. So funds that go towards summer school. And then the last grant that's funded through the integrated plan is the Early Intervention and Indicator Systems Grant. This is a pretty small grant, and this fund will be used to support our software for data analysis moving into next year. So that's kind of the over broad picture of where our grants are going. I wanted to take a moment to pause for any comment, either from the board or public comment that we might have gotten around our grants. And then I would vote to seek a motion to approve the integrated application for the 25-27 school year.
Sorry, can you go back to the, where it says the SIA allocation dollar figure?
Yeah, so what you have in the board packet
I know,
does
so-
not match these slides.
Yeah, I know.
What's in the board packet would be last year's information.
Right. Yeah, so my question was just seeing the comparison where so I guess it's only 110,000. So is there like I mean, if our enrollment's basically kind of stayed almost the same, then why does it seem like there's a little bit, I mean, it's not a huge increase, but a little bit of an increase here is
So the second year of every biennium is always more. The
ah,
first year is a
the
little bit less,
49-51
and then the
ratio.
second one.
Okay.
So what you're looking at last year was the second year of the biennium, so it's a little bit more. And you are correct that that does present the budgeting challenge of what you have in there in terms of going into the next biennium, having it be a little bit less. Mhm.
thank you.
I have I don't know if it's a relevant question or not, but I'm signed up to go to the Oregon School Boards Association Advocacy Day all day Thursday. And, to go meet with legislatures and hope that we get the funding. Are any of the current bills that, I mean, are they still in process? Do we know that this money's actually been funded for all the schools in the state or not?
We're currently using the governor's budget as our budgeting tool. And in that, there was an amount.
Mhm.
I haven't seen much. Again, we're going to figure out whether or not they're going to fund the governor's budget or whether they're going to have more revenue. We need more revenue. Certainly our roll-up costs are more than the 11% increase and it's not just us. Roll-up costs everywhere are larger. So SIA, they had an amount down there. I can't remember how much it was at this moment, but we're still using what the governor forecast as being the SIA. We got estimates from ODE based on those amounts, and that's what in your, we've loaded up to the website with those amounts. So we're using those budget amounts through the governor's budget. When you go, it would, yes, absolutely, we need to fund SIA and high school success. They're funded by CAT tax. And again, I think we're waiting for more. May 14th, I think, is the next financial forecast from the state, which will tell us whether or not the CAT tax has been pulling in more funds or whether it is people are slowing down their purchasing. That'll have a big impact on what we see for high school success, SIA, and then maybe the governor's budget, whether they're going to fund over it. Our roll-up costs are more than 11%. So we really need more revenue, whether that's through SIA, high school success, or whether that's through just the general fund. That's something that we need to impress upon our legislators that they calculated current service level and it's not quite current service level. And everyone around us is cutting. And there's a reason for that. That was probably more, but
Can you remind us of folks that don't know all the tax? What's CAT tax?
So it was when they passed the student investment account, there was a separate tax on some parts of business that are paying to fund this amount. I can't remember right off the top of my head specifically what pieces get it, but when you go out to dinner in many places, you'll see an extra amount on that receipt. Yeah.
Oh, so when you go to local purchasing, there's the extra little tax they
Yeah.
add on to it. Okay.
So Dave, I want to make sure I understood what you said. You were talking about roll-up costs. The difference between what I'm seeing in the packet and what you are presenting up here, Jillian, is a difference of just over $100,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Knowing that most of what we're funding with SIA grants is staff, is that even sufficient to handle things like the rising PERS costs?
It has posed a creative budget challenge, but also in the second year of the biennium. So last year, I did intentionally put in professional development and costs that were not staffing, so that we don't have that as cost in this year.
Okay. Okay.
So know that part of that difference is you see those allocations next year, it's all staff. There's not necessarily a ton of PD in those grants. That's typically what goes into budget year 2 as we move into it.
Okay. And the other thing is, this is just a gentle nudge and a bit of a Homer comment, since I know a guy that works for ODE on the assessment team. We technically don't administer SBAC in Oregon. We administer OSAS. And so I just don't want to create any confusion around what that might mean for the community.
SBAC is in the official application language as presented, and I cannot edit the longitudinal performance targets. As
Okay.
someone that might know someone that
Jillian knows
Take
her stuff.
that back to the Department of Education.
I would happily do so. That's really funny.
appreciate you.
Do we have any other questions for Jillian and her great work, and appreciate the hard work that you put into this?
I'm just curious, is there a reason why we aren't gonna update the SBAC percentage or the?
We can do that on our local narrative, but part of this is the application actually has to go to the board for approval. So you're
Okay.
approving the application,
Got it.
which is the language that I will be submitting to ODE. So I'm a little bit meticulous in that stance, but I'd be more than happy to update it on our local website.
That is great. Thank you so much.
I can make a motion. I move that the Newburgh Dundee Public Schools Board of Directors approve the integrated programs as presented.
Second.
Any further questions? And I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
All
for
your
the
hard
great
work.
work.
Keeping us on track. Nate, you want to talk to us about copiers?
Exciting stuff.
So exciting.
Ooh. Business as usual, right? All right, so what's in front of you is a notice of intent to participate in a cooperative procurement. And I'm want to just explain a little bit how cooperative procurements work. In the ORSs, they have a whole section 279A 205 that talks about cooperative procurements, how they should be done, and what they're good for. And cooperative procurements are intended to help in the procurement of like items and like industries, state industries, of course. And we are a participant in OETC, which is Organization for Educational Tech. I wrote it down because it's hard to say. Organization for Educational Technology and Curriculum, which is a purchasing cooperative that originally was started in Sherwood. And what it does is it allows organizations to be more nimble in getting needed services. And they do the procurement for us. They bring other districts in to get better pricing. And so anyways, our current copier contract expires in June of this year. Our fleet is aging. We have a couple loaners from Pacific Office because of the age of our machines. We use them very well. And in this process, what's been helpful actually is we had corporate, another brand of copier come out and they were interested. And so their timing was perfect because we were just engaging in this conversation with the Pacific office, and they put together a proposal for us, which we let Pacific office know, and they sharpened their pencil and gave us some better pricing than we originally had. And also, as part of this process, we have to go through a protest period, just as if we had let the RFP ourselves. That went on the street yesterday. And we have 7 days to receive any protests for this process. It's not a protest about us using the cooperative RFP, but about if that RFP has something that is protestable in the process of them doing that procurement. I did get a call just before the board meeting today from Canon Corporate, who wanted to see if we were going to let an RFP period. And I said, no, we're not planning on it. That was just a notice of protest that went on Oregon Buys. So he's like, okay, darn. And that was it. So anyway, so what we have is the intent to enter into contract under the OETC cooperative procurement. It's saving us $70 a month on our lease cost, and we have lower per copy charges as well than the prior lease. And we did actually got some faster machines in some of the schools as well. So any questions on copiers, cooperative procurement?
I see the second bullet point here, the estimated annual amount of this contract is estimated to be 100,000
Mhm.
for a lease term of 5 years. Okay.
Yeah, and that's because we have estimated usage that per copy count gets multiplied by.
Right. Okay.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Do we know what, like, say, last year's numbers were, or even this year, current to date? I
So
know
the-
we're 3/4 through or whatever.
Yeah, so the first current lease column shows what our lease cost is, our service cost per page, and then our average monthly service. In the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth and fifth lines. And so you can see the difference per month on the savings line would be the change on that per month. So I guess we could multiply it by 12 if you wanted the whole number.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I see the breakdown. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is just a linear per page cost. This isn't like with a certain number of pages
Nope.
minimum or anything.
Nope.
Okay.
Yep,
All
this
right.
is their flat rate for
Okay.
us.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Any more questions for Nate about the exciting copier contract? It is exciting. We're saving some money.
Yeah.
Nice. Anybody like to throw a motion out there?
Yeah, the Newburgh Dundee Board of Directors approves the intent to contract the Pacific Office Automation for copiers and managed print services. Guess I should state, make a motion for that.
Second.
Any further questions? I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
Okay. So obviously we have some May elections coming up. Next meet in May, we'll hear from counselor presentations.
Counselors are going to bring the counselor framework. We've been working on kind of mission, vision, what counselors do, what we want them to do. And so they'll bring that. There's also a policy involved with that too that will come, but just wanted to kind of get that in front of folks. We did support with the SIA that you just passed today. We're going to remove the counselors who are moving between buildings. So we will have counselors at buildings. They won't be split between buildings. And there's lots of exciting stuff here because of a success here is we're actually not far away from ASCA standards. There's some work the counselor group and some of our administrators need to do, but the national recognized like optimal program, we're not far off of that now. So they're going to come and present to you and talk about it.
Okay, So then we've got student representatives. Ooh, HVAC controls. It's exciting. And our next board meeting is May 13th. Just before we adjourn, I think it's really important that Tammy come up and tell us what exciting thing happened for somebody in your building. You want to have a seat up there and
Glad you mentioned it. So I may or may not have pulled off the surprise of a lifetime. It wasn't easy to do because, as most of you know, I have had a longtime partner by my side, Mark Brown, who has been my assistant principal and athletic director. And if there is one person that I credit with making Newburgh High School a great place to walk into for kids every day, it's Mark Brown. He is my culture guy. When I hired him, I told him, this is what I need you to do. And he just delivered phenomenally. And so I wrote a letter of support. So did several other people. And Mark was recognized Monday morning, to his surprise, as the, not one of, but as the Jostens Educator of the Year. So it was really fun. We invited his wife and kids. He didn't know they were there. Some of our Jostens reps came as well. And then Dr. Phil Campbell, who is been kind of a mentor to Mark in Jostens, got to deliver the news via Google Meet. So it was really fun. Super proud of him.
Yeah.
Well deserved. Well deserved. He does amazing things every day.
In the nation.
In the nation.
Right.
In the
Yeah.
nation. Yes. So
that is
Yep.
really great. Well, thank you.
And he-
thanks for coming up and saying.
Yeah. absolutely.
Oh, thanks for coming up and saying something. Okay. Meeting is adjourned.